not only as a pioneer agricultural scientist, but also as a builder of institutions and ideas within the India's civil society space. As part of today's program, we'll shortly move into a panel discussion. But before we move into the discussion, I would like to introduce Sri Satyananda Mishra, Chairperson of the National Commission for India. Satyananda ji is a distinguished public servant with a long and accomplished career in governance and public institutions. He has served as Chief Information Commissioner of India from 2010 to 2013, where he played a significant role in strengthening transparency and advancing the implementation of the Right to Information Act. Over the years, he has held several senior positions in the Government of India and continues to contribute actively to public life and democratic institutions. May I now request Mr. Satyananda Mishra to please come on stage and deliver the opening remarks.
Good evening, friends. One of the advantages of one's association with NFI is that from the day one, you get the associated with the legacy of those people who built India. And we are celebrating the centenary year of one such builder of modern India. In the epics, we read about Vishwakarma, who used to build cities, houses for gods. The person in whose memory we are gathered here today was the one who built the farms of India, from which in his time 1/3 of today's population used to feed, and 3 times India's population has grown, and yet the same farms provide the food for such a large population, built on the foundations which he laid. Bharat Ratna M.S. Swaminathan was legend. It will be very cliche to say that, but he was indeed a legend, a builder of modern India, as I say. Strangely, in the early 50s, one gentleman from Karnataka who was also conferred the Bharat Ratna, Visvesvaraya, he used to build dams which used to irrigate lands. And then from the same part of India came another person who built fields and helped the people to utilize the the water which Visvesvaraya's dams would pound and create and store in reservoirs. So when later I visited the office of the Director General of ICAR, because I come from Odisha, and one gentleman from Odisha was the Director General of ICAR for a long period of 6 years, so I used to visit him sometimes. And I used to hear from him the number of institutions which ICAR has in India, and most of those institutions, branches were set up during the period of Professor Swaminathan. And it is mind-boggling. I think most of us would not know that ICAR as a body has such a large number of institutions all over India. I mean, wherever you go in India, in whatever place, you not very far from where you are would be an ICAR institution. This is, I mean, it has not been very easy to provide food to so many people in India. I mean, the kind of scale, the spread, the depth of the initiative which people like him, scientists like him, who chose to be to come to administration, who alternated between research and administration almost like a musician. It is because of them that India is today is not importing food grains. It's not, in fact, exporting food grains. It's not going begging to the world. In our young age, when I was in the school or in the college, we used to get food under PL 480. I mean, since I studied in a small tribal school in a district in Odisha, our school used to receive buttermilk, butter oil from CARE. CARE used to distribute that the PL 480, cereal and the butter for school children. All that changed. All that changed because statesmen, scientists, administrators all rolled into one. With the help of other statesmen of the time, they came to the helm of affairs and molded India's agriculture and set us on this path. But it is not only agriculture or agricultural research to which Professor Swaminathan contributed in such a major way. He, along with another Bharat Ratna, C. Subramaniam, founded this foundation. I mean, to think of after his retirement, he was never retired in that sense because if I recall, almost till he left us, there was not every few months you would surely read about him, his opinion, his views, and he was such a handsome person that till his age did not reduce or diminish his handsomeness. So both as an intellectual, as a human being, as a amiable person, I mean, you can consider him from any parameter by which you judge human beings, and he was one of the most significant Indians that our generation saw and lived with. So NFI, on behalf of NFI, I pay my most sincere tribute to his legacy, and I think that by setting up NFI and through NFI helping several dozen small NGOs all over the country, Professor Swaminathan and his colleagues really started a revolution of civil society organizations. Mr. Patnaik has told me that there are many civil society other organizations to which Professor Swaminathan has contributed. I will not list them here, but I'm very happy that his illustrious daughter, Dr. Swaminathan, is also with us. And during the COVID time, almost we used to see her face on the TV so regularly that she became a household name. So I think we are all grateful to Ms. Swaminathan for the contribution they made to the life of India. Thank you so much for gathering here to pay tribute to such a great man's legacy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for those thoughtful opening remarks and insights I think we didn't really know, and also setting the context for today's conversation. We'll now move to our panel discussion, and it is my pleasure to introduce our distinguished panelists. First, we have Dr. Soumya Swaminathan, Chairperson of the MS Swaminathan Research Foundation. She's a globally respected and a public health expert. Dr. Soumya Swaminathan has a distinguished career in health research and policy. She had previously served as the chief scientist at the World Health Organization, where she played a key role in shaping global health research priorities and also during the COVID-19 pandemic. She has been the Director General of the Indian Council of Medical Research and the Secretary of Department of Health Research with Government of India. Through her leadership in global health and her work at MSSRF, she continues to advance the vision of science serving society that Professor Swaminathan championed. Welcome, ma'am. Please, ma'am. Our next panelist is Ms. Poonam Mutreja. She is currently the Executive Director of the Population Foundation of India. Ms. Mutreja is one of the India's leading advocate for gender equality, reproductive health, and social change. She has worked for several decades on the issues of women's empowerment, population stabilization, and development communication. Under her leadership, the Population Foundation of India has led several innovative campaigns that use media and storytelling to advance public awareness and policy dialogue on gender and health. Welcome, ma'am. And moderating today's discussion is Mr. Biraj Patnaik. He is the Executive Director of the National Foundation for India and has previously worked with national campaigns and policy institutions. Thank you so much. And with this, we'll begin our discussion.
Thank you, Garvit, and such a pleasure to have Soumya and Poonam here. The idea of today's evening really came about as we were celebrating the 100th anniversary of Professor Swaminathan. That his role as an agriculture scientist, as a person who fed India, as a person who's built the not just the governance architecture, but I would say the entire architecture of food security over a 50-60 year period, culminating, I would say, with what was his most important contribution in the later part of his life of getting the National Food Security Act through Parliament as part of the National Advisory Council. That's very well known and recognized. Yet, the role that he's played as a champion of civil society, as a builder of institutions, as a great believer that there is a role that organizations which are neither part of the state nor part of the market have to play in building India, and his vision of India is something that is rarely spoken about. It's almost like his work in agriculture, and understandably so, overshadows his achievements in most of these other fields. So when I spoke to Soumya and Nitya, of course, thank you Nitya, and instigated this thought that we should do something to commemorate that, I could think of no finer example to present, abusing my privilege as a moderator to say a few words, than a platform by the National Foundation for India, which was founded by these two doyens, the three people out of three people who founded NFI. One was Bharat Ratna C. Subramanian, and then Professor Swaminathan, and Dr. Kamla Chaudhary, someone who's again very unheralded, unspoken about, but she was the founder of IIM Ahmedabad as well. And it was Professor Swaminathan who provided the intellectual leadership to NFI in its formative years. He was with us for 12 years. He had 2 terms as chair of the board of NFI. I remember when I first joined NFI 6 years ago, my association with Professor Swaminathan is very old. It dates back to the late 90s, early 2000s, but that is entirely in the field of food. And of course, when he was in the NAC and so on. So I'm not going to speak about that because we promised ourselves that there have been way too many occasions where that's been spoken about. So when I joined NFI, I spent the first week looking at the board minutes of 35 years. I just did that. And I must say it was a deeply humbling experience to just read those minutes, because it gave a window into a India that was very different, India that was so completely prescient in its possibilities for civil society, a very different India from what we have now. And you had on the board, because Professor Swaminathan persuaded some of the best Indians of his generation, be it Ratan Tata, S.P. Godrej, Verghese Kurian, Begum Bilkis Latif, people of that stature to join the first board of NFI, Dr. Verghese Kurian and so on. and to read the conversations that they were having, starting with the trust deed of NFI, which is a document. I wish I could speak, make it more public than it is, but given the trolling and regulatory reasons, I think it's better kept only to us. But even the trust deed of NFI and the vision that they had for a new organization, which was being set up as India's first independent domestic philanthropy, the vision was literally the sky is the limit. And the two main contributions that Professor Swaminathan that you see makes throughout his discussions in board meeting after board meeting, and which I feel are the core to NFI's vision even today, is what he called reaching the unreached. And he meant it in two senses primarily. One, in the sense of marginalization, especially women and communities who are not reached. And second, in terms of geographical isolation, as he put it. So his passion for the Northeast, which has driven NFI's work for a long time, and the continued focus on minorities, on marginal communities, on Dalits, on Adivasis, is still driven by Professor Swaminathan's vision. You can see, when I read those documents, of course, I saw the negotiation between doyens on not just about NFI, the conversations were much larger. Because on one hand, you had India had just undergone liberalization, and Ratan Tata, who was on the board, came about, he got a paper he wrote a paper for NFI, outlining what he thought should be the vision for NFI. And his vision was that you have the India-US Business Council, which is the arbiter and negotiator of the liberalization process in the US. Shouldn't India have a body which makes liberalization kinder and with a more human face? And shouldn't therefore NFI play that role? And being the shrewd administrator that he was, I can see Professor Swaminathan not challenging that vision, but steering the organization away towards more grassroots work, towards a different dimension of, because he had a understanding of civil society which was way beyond, I would say, many doyens of civil society who lived in those times. He had an intuitive sense of what would work and what wouldn't. And just to give you one example, that till the very end, he also understood that civil society needed the space to defend itself. If it has to stand up for people, it needs a space. We don't talk about it now, it's perhaps politically incorrect to say this, but during the 2010s when the NAC was in, when the UPA government was there, a number of laws were amended and changed, and we still face the brunt of those laws, be it the FCRA, the UAPA, the income tax laws, and the Prevention of Money Laundering Act laws. And when I went to Professor Swaminathan on one of those very rare occasions where it was a discussion not about food but about civil society, and I carried the FCRA amendments to him, I said, "Sir, Mr. Chidambaram is bringing about these amendments and they're going to be it's going to impact us very badly." This is not something I did only with him. I went to every single National Advisory Council member, and most of them came from civil society. And let me tell you this, that the only person who within 5 minutes not just understood the issue, promised to make an intervention, immediately wrote a letter to Mrs. Gandhi, who was chairing the UPA, to say that these amendments are going to be extremely harmful for civil society, and then raised it with his fellow NAC members, was Professor Swaminathan. So till the very end of his public association, in a way, he had a great, why it is so important to hold institutions, nurture them, build them. And it's really that which we wanted to today reflect on, speak about. It's just a gathering of friends and close associates, and I'm sure many people who are sitting here would also like to speak. So what I'll do is I'll just give the floor to Soumya and then Poonam to speak to these issues, and then I'll request many friends who've been associated with him here. I can see Harish, I think Harish is on his way, and other friends, Nitya's there. So please do speak. Prabhu's here, do speak to those issues. So Soumya, start with you.
Thank you, Biraj. Thank you very much for organizing this. A very different look at my father's life and contributions. And as you said, I think that you could go on discussing. There were so many facets. So I don't want to take too long. I think it's better to hear from others. But I think what my observations were, firstly, that he believed in the goodness of every human being and every group or organization that was trying to do something. However small or however big, he treated them the same. That's very, very hard to do, because I am often faced with this situation where there's so many multiple demands, but he treated each one with the same importance and respect. And everywhere I travel now, I think I hear from so many people, your father came here, he contributed, this institution would not have been this. Even though he was not formally on the board or anything, he gave us that initial seed of an idea and we've built on that. So, whether it was the Rotary Club trying to do something, and as you know, they have annual projects, and he took them seriously and gave them ideas, because again, he believed that everyone can do some good, that nobody's too unimportant or small, and that you should give your best ideas, and then some of them will take it forward and some of them won't. But he was never short of ideas and never unwilling to share them, which I think is a very, very rare thing, as you said, for people to really give of themselves and their knowledge. The other was that he believed that, the employees, I want to do more than that. And the employees, I want to do more than that. And I think TB is a good. And so he was the founding chair, and he stayed till the end. She wouldn't let him resign also. And so now almost 30 years that institution is working for TB, and you could say, what does he have to do with TB? But the fact is that he could make those links between, let's say, TB and leprosy and nutrition. I think he was one of the first people to speak about food as medicine. Now it's very fashionable. The United States has a big program called Food as Medicine. But in the early 80s, he wrote a report on leprosy where he said that without food and nutrition, you can't treat people with chronic diseases. They're not going to get better with medicines alone. And so long before the TB program or the leprosy program has a nutrition component, he had propagated that. So he could always see the bigger picture, and because his actual work and experience in he knew the reality of a lot of India. So all his, I think, ideas came from that reality. And he was most happy when actually the tribals or the village people were recognized, and it was those institutions in the communities that were recognized. Like there was the Equator Award that went to a group of tribal women from Orissa, from Koraput district. And he was in Cape Town at that conference where the Equator Award was awarded to Komla Pujari, who later also got a Padma Award. And took such pride in the fact that this tribal woman who couldn't speak any language apart from her own was in Cape Town receiving this award. Another example he used to give is of a woman from, I think, Tamil Nadu only, from a rural Tamil Nadu, who also went to receive the World Information Society conference in Geneva. And he bumped into her there. She was being recognized. And he said, how are you managing? You've come from rural Tamil Nadu all alone and so on. And she said, no, my husband is sending me an email every 1 hour. So he took such pride in the fact that this woman, who had not seen a computer till a few years before those village knowledge centers had been set up, was today communicating with her husband. And when the World Trade Center was attacked, these women who was operating these computer centers wrote emails to Professor Bruce Alberts, who was then the president of the National Academy of Sciences, to say, are you all right, are you safe, we know you're in Washington and Washington's being attacked. And he was so touched because he'd actually visited those villages. One of them is a knowledge center set in a temple, in a room in a temple. So the community used to provide the space, and it was transformative, especially for the women of those villages. For the first time, they were in control of the computers and all the knowledge that they could get from those computers, and the rest of the villagers would come to them for advice. So I think that it was true empowerment, that the word is used so often, but you could see it, in practice and in reality. So I'm sure others, will have a lot more to share, but I think it was just his belief in people, his wanting to connect the dots and provide the bigger vision, and then give the freedom. And he never chased you after that, right? To say what did you do? I gave you all these ideas and things like that. No, he was never. Very often he would have been very disappointed, I'm sure, with things that didn't go well or as he would have liked, but he would never say, because he knew, he used to say, let 1,000 flowers bloom, and some of them are going to do really well.
Thank you, Soumya. Poonam, you're again from an institution where he's played such an important and pivotal role, and working in a field that he was also very passionate about, the intersection of gender and population. So over to you.
So MS, as he was popularly and fondly and respectfully called, is how I will refer to Dr. Swaminathan. And when I met Dr. MS the first time, what threw me off when he was the deputy chair of the Planning Commission some 45 years ago, or 40 years ago, I was struck by his brilliance, his scientific rigor. It had a compassion towards people and a compassion to every time you met him anywhere. And we were very privileged that he was on the board of Population Foundation of India for 20 years. He was also the chair of the Advisory Council of Population Foundation, which was the policy-making body. And I've never seen anybody who's 1/50th as busy as Dr. Swaminathan was, except both those positions after Dr. Swaminathan. People find it too much to do both. We also have Soumya on our board now. But that doesn't mean we don't miss Dr. Swaminathan. Now, Dr. Swaminathan, he took over the J.R.D. Tata legacy of the family planning, population stabilization vision. But he changed it very quickly as the world changed into population, not family planning, but population and development. And, for him, the visionary that he was far ahead of ICPD agenda, and he's not something that he's not. ICPD agenda is the International Conference for Population and Development that took place in '94 in Cairo, which changed the entire paradigm shift from family planning and coercion and control to women-centered, women's rights, reproductive justice, development, sustainable development. And for Dr. Swaminathan, one of the commissions that he's not so well known, which is well known, is that in '84, Dr. Swaminathan chaired the Population Commission. And if you want to reflect on how historically many of us came where we are speaking today about gender empowerment and women's choices and so on, you will see it in that report. Second, for him, women's rights were not just reproductive rights, but the framework that he gave, which is what the world is actually dealing with today, is Dr. Swaminathan from his commission. And when in 1994 at the ICPD, when I heard him speak, I realized where the changes were coming from globally, because his language and the report is what was the final plan of action that emerged, which 189 countries in Cairo signed up to. Another, I want to quote Dr. Swaminathan on gender issues, and you raised how proud he was of women. And that quote sums up his approach, his ideology, his philosophy, and that is, there's a growing realization that gender justice and equity are vital for happy homes and societies. Happy homes and societies. Now we are talking about caregiving and so much of the contribution of the population dynamics in the home. But this quote, I'm quoting from 40 years ago, he said this. And for him, women's issues were structural fault lines in the architecture, global and in India. And so when he moved in fact, he changed the name of Family Planning Foundation, is what we were called, to Population Foundation of India. He made a statement in that. And under his guidance, PFI moved from a narrow silos of family planning and quality of family planning, etc., to a reproductive justice approach, women's rights, and so on. And I want to go back to why the commission, Swaminathan Commission on Population, was so special. He absolutely rejected the top-down approach and made a plan for community-based planning, which many of us talk about in health and others, but he was a pioneer in that. And he felt that it was at the village level, not even at the district level, where the planning for family has to take place along with the women. And what set him apart was his enormous clarity in good times and in uncertainties. You went with a challenge which you thought was not surmountable to Dr. Swaminathan. He would have a very simple, gentle, visionary solution. And I keep thinking about in these times where I say today, the only certainty is, and I don't say that today because there's a war and there's a madman creating chaos in the world, but I've been saying it for several months, actually ever since he came, that the only certainty in the world today is uncertainty. And I keep thinking, if Dr. Swaminathan was here, what would he be guiding us to do? For example, when I went to him in maybe 2017, when I saw that the whole climate was changing in India, where advocacy and speaking out was becoming an increasing challenge, I remember Dr. Swaminathan said to me, he said, don't speak without data. Let the data drive and then speak the truth. Don't fear from speaking the truth. And he said, and be very political and strategic. Every word you say, especially when you're being critical and advocating for what others may not believe, he said, remember there's politics. So be very, very careful. And if I do believe, since many of you know, PFI is one of the few organizations that speaks out very vocally on issues that are very contentious in India today, it is that spirit and the guidance. And finally, I do want to say that it wasn't just PFI. Dr. Swaminathan was a quintessential mentor. For him, mentoring was not about just giving you subject matter advice. It was about giving you values. And not imposing them, as you said. It was giving you values. It was giving you a way to think. And so I just feel very blessed to have had the privilege of being guided by him beyond the Population Foundation when he was in the Planning Commission. And if you remember his vision and his mission for every village a knowledge center in 5 years, and with what passion, and he brought the global community to invest in knowledge building, technology, and so on at the village level. And again, 5 years I was in that commission, and very few people took upon young people who knew very little about science and know very little about technology too. But it was a huge learning, and when I was introduced, he said we are doing a lot of work using technology in communication. Those seeds all came from there.
Thank you, Poonam. And actually, you know, so much of it resonates with his last call. It was a video call. It was the peak of COVID 2020. Nitya had very kindly, I said, you know, organize this with the whole NFI team. This is exactly what he told us. You know, he said, I'm so happy you are here now, but please make sure that you speak with great clarity, speak the truth, but speak with clarity and advocate. And of course, he had to say his favorite phrase, you know, we set this up to reach the unreached, and now it's up to all of you to take it. I'm so grateful that he could do that. So there are many people in the audience, you don't want to make it a one-way sort of interaction. Harish, Nitya, Prabhu, I can see a lot of people. Vandana, I mean, I must say, Vandana is here because one of the contributors to Professor Swaminathan's life as an equal, if not more than an equal partner, was Dr. Meena Swaminathan, his wife. And Vandana and I have been very privileged to have been scolded by her as part of the Right to Food campaign. She was a great pioneer in her own right as of ECCD, as a founder of Mobile Villages. So Vandana, please, anyone who wants to speak, go. Should we? Okay. We'll start here. Harish. Yeah, there's no order here. Just raise your hands.
See, one of the biggest things which I found after Professor Swaminathan passed away, there was a bhog ceremony and an Antim Ardas service in Gurudwara in Punjab. So it showed, I mean, what he was to the farmers.